Ceramic vessels like the one I'm holding have been made in Korea for some 2,000 years. They were made to store kimchi, a brine-soaked food made primarily of cabbage and red pepper, so central to the lives of Koreans that during the kimchi-making season in November, the customary greeting of Annyeong Hasimnika, are you in peace, becomes simply, how's your kimchi making? Today, the vessels used for the storage of kimchi are produced largely as they were in the past. For the practical potter, they provide a living case study of historical ceramic processes and techniques. This film was made both to document the skills of the Korean potter before they pass away, victims of advancing technology and what we call progress, as well as to pay homage to the superb skills of the Korean potter. In large measure, the survival and the existence of Korean society is due to the skills of its master craftsmen in clay. The use of old trucks is one of the few connections with our modern technology. Historically, the transportation of clay from its source to the workshops was a major undertaking involving horses, carts, boats, and waterways. To be thoroughly dried in the sun, the clay is spread with a rake. Large clumps are broken with a hoe and large stones removed. It is a traditional country where values stemming from conditions of life far removed from the 20th century still prevail. The ancient method of processing clay is still used today. It produces abundant amounts of refined clay using hand power only. The hard and monotonous work of mixing and slaking raw clay is done by women. They seem to serve as monumental symbols of endless energy, strength, and patience. The watery slip called chilmol is poured into a second vat through a sieve. This assures pebbles, plant materials, sand, etc. do not enter the second or settling vat. In this complex, each of the 4 mixing and settling troughs is manned by a woman. After all the clay has been taken out of the first vat, only stones and sand are left. These are removed with a shovel, more water is added, and the process is begun again. When more water is needed for the mixing process, the gate of a small dike is removed. The relatively pure top layer of water from the second vat flows back into the mixing vat. When the second vat has been completely filled, it is scooped out with buckets and taken to the drying fields using the raised levees as walkways. To prevent impurities from getting into the clay and to make it easy to remove, the ground is first covered with cloth. The slurry is poured over this. When the sun and the wind have done their work, the clay has been transformed into gigantic blocks of stiff plastic clay. Traditionally, and in some areas today, the raw clay was brought on a cart or an A-frame to the workshop. It would then be sprinkled with water, pounded, sliced, and pounded again. Impurities were not removed. The refined clay from the drying fields are transported to the workshop by cart, and the chunks are stacked on the workshop floor. Once on the workshop floor, the clay is cut into thin slices, about 1/8 inch in thickness. This is part of a second processing performed by workers known as hardy lads or clay slaves. The main reason for slicing the clay is to homogenize the distribution of soft and dry clay. Next, The hardy lads roll the clay into balls weighing 40 or 50 pounds. These sliced balls of clay are stacked up until a rectangular mass of clay is formed about 10 foot in length, 3 foot in width, and 3 foot high. That is about 5 tons. Each layer of balls is beaten with a wooden mallet or kotme. After the sliced balls are stacked up and beaten, they are again sliced for a second time. These sliced balls of clay are carried to the center of the workshop floor and thrown into a rectangular mass where they are for a second time pounded according to a definite order, first with the head of the kotme and then with the side. Clay prepared in this way is as well mixed as by pug mill. The pounding of the clay may account for the peculiar wet strength and toughness of Onggi clay. The elan and good nature of the workers in performing difficult physical tasks must be seen to be appreciated. Working with clay from 5 a.m. to about 6 p.m., they are in superb physical condition. The easy skill with which they perform their task is entirely deceptive. This pounded mass of clay is then turned over and beaten again. Finally, this mass is again cut into squares for a second time. Those to be used immediately are moved to a place just beside the potter's wheel. The rest are covered with a vinyl sheeting so that the surface of the clay will not dry out. Each square of clay weighs about 100 pounds. The blocks of clay, which are to be used immediately, are cut into oblong blocks about 18 inches by 3 by 3 inches, weighing some 20 pounds each. A hardy lad quickly moves one of these to a relatively flat area of the earthen floor, where he begins to make lateral throws of the clay, quickly extending its length to some 3 or 4 feet. This bar is slightly twisted to form a spiral cylinder of clay. The technique of twisting the clay bar assures the easy transition from bar form to a smooth, even coil. The coil is then reduced to a diameter of about 2 inches and expanded to about 6 feet in length by rolling it backwards and forwards on the earth floor. The pile of these coils is laid next to the potter's wheel, ready for use. The forming of these coils is done with virtuoso speed and skill. The potter's task is to shape the pots. This task begins with the making of a base for the vessel. A ball of clay, about 8 pounds in weight, is first wedged and then given several throws on the earth floor so that a thick disc is formed. This is expanded to about 16 inches in diameter and 3/8 inch in thickness by a series of rotations and lateral throws. This process is repeated until a stack about 1 foot in height is formed. These are placed next to the potter's wheel. He places the disc on his wheel and flattens it by beating it with a pangmungi, or beating stick. The potters place great emphasis on learning this. If it is not done correctly, the bottom will crack either in the drying or firing stage. The first portion of the vessel wall may be fashioned of the excess clay from the disc of clay used in the making of the base. A coil of clay is applied with incredible speed to strengthen the joint. In the next step, the potter takes a coil of clay and attaches it to the first coil with magical speed. Further coils are added. The technique used in coil joining involves a coordinated pressure of the left palm on the outside surface of the clay, together with a series of half rotations of the right hand and index finger, exerting a downward and opposing lateral pressure. The technique of joining coils appears effortless, yet years of training are necessary to coordinate the movements of the hands and the left foot turning the wheel. Now the toge, or wooden anvil, and the wooden paddle are in full action. By an opposing striking action of the anvil on the interior wall and of the paddle on the exterior wall, while the left foot rotates the wheel in a counterclockwise direction, the coils of clay are thoroughly joined and the walls grow thinner. In addition, the clay is compressed and thus becomes stronger. While the potter paddles, he rotates the wheel slowly with a rapid heel action of the left foot, a method requiring motor skills entirely unknown in the West. With this accomplished, he takes up scrapers. They are used simultaneously while the potter revolves the wheel rapidly toward himself with his left foot. The torque delivered by the pressure of the scrapers on the clay wall must be overcome by a strong action of the left leg. The next stage is the construction of the midsection of the vessel using the same sequence of coil application. The lightning speed is a result of years of practice and of great physical strength. The clay, although it seems to be as soft as butter, is actually tough and resistant. Due to its stiffness, it does not adhere to the wooden tools. Construction of the top section follows immediately. For large vessels only, a charcoal brazier is used to stiffen the bottom section. The potter again takes up two scrapers. The one used on the inside is usually a seashell. The larger outside scraper is made of wood. The potter, holding the scrapers rigidly opposed to each other, turns the wheel rapidly, pulling the wheel with his left leg. To prevent soreness and maintain strength, the leg muscles must be used every day. After cutting away the excess clay at the top, the potter takes a molcaggio, a quilted strip of cloth made by the potter's wife. With this, he forms the lip of the vessel. The size of the mouth must be exact. It is checked with a tool known as a top marker. If the pot is large, the potter gets help to lift it. A piece of cloth is used ingeniously to lift and carry the freshly thrown vessel to the sonchim, or drying area. There are numerous regional variations in the forming, proportion of parts, and embellishment of kimchi vessels. A method at once beautiful and impressive is unique to Chola province. Long slabs of clay are formed by repeated lateral throws on the workshop floor. Cut to the proper length, the slabs are turned vertically and joined. The techniques of paddling and scraping are the same throughout the country. This potter from Chola province is 75 years old. Well past the traditional retirement age of 60, he continues to exercise his skills by choice rather than necessity. A variation in the forming of coils is seen in a similar workshop located in Sonori. There is a dramatic aerial quality to the lateral throws, and the length of the coils is startling. To make a lid, only one coil is attached to the clay disc. The coil is quickly wheel-formed. A layer of dry kaolin previously applied prevents the disc from adhering to the throwing head, except at the edges. These, rapidly cut, allow the lid to be lifted quickly from the wheel with the aid of two curved sticks called tulce. Carried outside, they are placed on the ground to dry. Because the potters channel all their energy into one thing, they reach pinnacles of skill which are still unsurpassed by modern technology. The leather-hard vessel is taken to the glazing vat, into which it is immersed, spun around, and removed. The vessel is turned upside down and propped up over the top of the glazing vat to allow excess glaze to run off. After 2 or 3 days of further drying, glazed pots are taken to a storeroom until enough have been produced for a firing. Finger decorations symbolizing orchids are sometimes drawn through the wet glaze. Small pots are glazed in a similar manner. The 3 most important ingredients of the glaze are ashes, clay, and lead oxide. Up to 20 years ago, only ashes, clay, and water were used. However, the higher temperatures necessary required abundant supplies of wood. Today, the supply of wood is severely limited. Red lead oxide is a necessary addition because it lowers the fusion point of the glaze ingredients and thus conserves wood. footing of the kiln is done primarily by the potters themselves. In order to keep the pots level on the inclined floor of the kiln, they are propped up with small support stands made of raw kaolin, which also allow the heat to flow evenly around the base of the pots. Usually the pots are stacked 3 high. The potters start stacking at the top, working their way down past the entrance to the fire chamber itself. Smaller pots are always stacked within larger pots according to a definite order. A huge kiln can easily accommodate 1,000 large pots. To prevent the glazed surfaces from sticking together during firing, quartz grits are used. The firing develops in 6 stages. It requires constant tending for 5 to 6 days and nights. During the white flame stage, the flames eventually fill the entire firing chamber and begin to surge upward into the kiln itself. This stage of firing continues for about 5 hours. A poker or fire shovel is occasionally used to distribute the burning material more evenly within the chamber. The potters now leave the front of the kiln and begin a mad dash to bring fuel to the stoke holes. The temperature in the kiln by this time has risen to 1,000 degrees centigrade. If the potters from their position at the stoke holes can see the vessels glistening and melting evenly, they know all is going satisfactorily. A clay plug seals each stoke hole as the fire proceeds up the kiln. It is 6 a.m., the 6th day of firing. Only a few stoke holes remain to be sealed. The character of these potters is impressive. Their capacity for work is extraordinary. They have an innate sense of courtesy and hospitality. They have worked, eaten, and slept with the kiln. They must develop high levels of tolerance to heat. It is a matter of pride as well as necessity. The final stoke hole has been reached. The glazed surfaces now shine brightly. No longer contained, the flames heat only the morning air. Through the flue openings at the top of the kiln, the gleaming vessels can be seen. A temperature of over 1,000 degrees centigrade has been reached, nearly 1,900 degrees Fahrenheit. The stoke holes have all been sealed. The final task is to seal the flue openings themselves. Kiln stacks or chimneys are not part of the construction of traditional kilns. After the firing has been completed and the kiln falls silent, another 5 to 7 days is needed for it to cool. As soon as the kiln is cool enough, the doors are opened and the fired pots brought to daylight. All the personnel of the workshop are mobilized to gather the harvest of the kiln. According to type, the pots are sorted and arranged in rows of 10 to facilitate dividing up the profits later on. The work is an end in itself. Developed to a concert pitch of performance, it is anti-commercial and without self-interest. The orchids have bloomed.